Welcome, everybody. Welcome to the Full Genetic Pavilion. I'm David Weil. I'm the Manager of Operations and Educational Technology here at the Center for Bioethics and Humanities. And, you know, with any project this big, there's so many people to thank. So that's one of the things that I want to do as we get the ball underway, because pulling off this mural and the exhibition, it really took a village to bring this to reality. And like I said, we're going to try and keep this maybe go an hour at the most or a little less so we can get you out of here in time to hopefully see a championship game tonight. Yes? All right. So for the mural, we had a really amazing, talented, diverse committee that put that together. And I know I saw Jasmine here today and Warren was on our committee. Is there anybody else from our committee that was here this evening? Well, thank you, Jasmine and Warren, for your participation, and Frank, you were on our committee as well. So we couldn't have done it without you, really. And just as we were about to embark on this mural project, which got hung on the 1st of May, I believe, I met Dr. Jo O'Donnell, and she's the director of the Colorado Area Health Education Center, also known as AHEC. So Jo O'Donnell and I met literally a week before the first committee meeting for the mural. And one of the things that AHEC does is that they have a lot of outreach programs, health-related outreach programs. And one of their programs brings health-themed murals to rural Colorado. And that's a program that Frank manages here. And as soon as we started talking about what we were doing here on campus, it was like kismet. It was such a miracle that we ran into each other and learned more about what each of us was doing. And it turns out that we became partners. And Jo and all of her team at AHEC, they shared their experience, their resources, and AHEC graciously funded the entire mural project. So Jo isn't here today. She's on clinical service, but I really appreciate her support in all ways. We've been great partners and continue to be. Frank Garza is the program manager for their mural program at AHEC. And Frank was just amazingly instrumental in guiding us in this project. Frank is an artist, a sculptor, and a muralist. He's been doing this for over 20 years. And I was a mural virgin. This was my first time ever. So Frank guided us in so many different ways at every juncture in the process and kind of kept us on track. So thank you, Frank, for making this so successful and for keeping us out of trouble in the woods.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much. And then most importantly is Juls Mendoza, our artist. Juls, we sent out a call for proposals and we had 96 submissions, most of which were from around the country and even a few international submissions. And we chose Juls. He's a Denver-based artist and he himself experienced childhood migration firsthand. His family left Ciudad Juarez when he was just 11 years old. And we're so proud to have your exquisite mural, which is inspiring our students and staff and faculty and visitors every day on campus. So thank you, Juls. And as if the mural wasn't enough, we've also done the exhibit. And in testimony is kind of the overarching theme of our programming throughout the rest of this year. And it's art inspired by the statements of children in detention. The mural and the exhibit, as well as an upcoming interprofessional symposium in September and the premiere of Soul Echoes, which will be an immersive vocal and dance performance, all relate to the work of Professor Warren Binford. And Warren is an international children's rights scholar, lawyer, an advocate for children's rights. We're so honored to showcase the incredible work of the artist Warren has collaborated with. Now, honestly, I'm just awestruck by all of Warren's achievements, her passion for children's welfare, and the creative strategies that she's been using to really share these stories and advocate for social change. So Warren was one of several investigators who in 2019 traveled to a border detention facility in Clint, Texas, to monitor the conditions under which migrant children were being held. And what she found there was clearly human rights violations. These kids were separated from their parents and living in deplorable conditions. And the Art of Advocacy exhibit that's both in the gallery and throughout the lobby is really some highlights of just 4 of the projects that Warren's been involved with that integrate the testimony of children held at Clint and the conditions they endured. We're also really fortunate to have engaged Sara Fischer, our curator for the exhibition.
Thank you.
Sara came in a little late into the process, but it wasn't too late to be incredibly productive and useful for us, and continues to just advocate for the exhibit and bringing her community together. Sara brings a remarkable vision and creative eye. One example is, as Sara reviewed all 365 pieces of artwork that Andra did, watercolors. She did one watercolor a day for a year. And Sara miraculously curated these down to 40 paintings and arranged them in a way that's so visually compelling. It just amazes me, the impact that it has, considering the huge body of work that you had in the short amount of time you had to work with it. So we couldn't have staged a show without you. So thank you
so much.
And now, that we've got this out of the way, I'd like to kick off our discussion. And Warren, while I've got you, before we end up with technical issues, maybe I can ask you to start out the Q&A and tell us, how did you begin to use art as a window into your advocacy work? You're a lawyer. How did you make this connection to using art to tell the stories and the work in the advocacy realm?
David, I'm going to answer that question, but before I do, I also want to say thank you to you. When I first pitched the testimony series to Matt Wynea, the director of the Center for Bioethics and Humanities in 2020, he was so supportive, and everybody here has been so supportive. But in the last few months, you have really just taken ownership of this and been such a powerful partner to work with and brought this together despite so many challenges that we faced. And I also want to thank the university leadership because, as you said, the CU Anschutz has never had a mural before. And when you first mentioned adding that to testimony, I was scared because they had never done it before, and they were so receptive to the idea. And so I want to thank you for having the courage, bringing Joe and Frank into this process. And then, most of all, Juls, I just can't thank you enough for the power that you brought to the campus and the impact that it's having on so many of us. I remember the first time that I saw the file you submitted, it gave me chills all over. It's so colorful and so hopeful, and yet conveys so much the challenges that children face when they're in migration. And so I want to be sure to thank each of you, but of course, David, you didn't mention yourself. So I want to make sure that everybody knows that you've been a tremendous partner, standing shoulder to shoulder with me as we brought this testimony series together. So thank you, David.
Thank you. Truly a labor of love.
Yeah. So as David said, I was asked, I was one of a few private citizens who were allowed to go into the Border Patrol facilities, ICE facilities, and ORR facilities, where thousands of children, tens of thousands of children were being kept between the years of 2017 and 2021. And during those years, we were watching a marked decline in the facilities and a marked decline in the health and well-being of the children and the families that we were interviewing. And in fact, we were documenting that at least 7 children died during the period of time that we were visiting these facilities. And they were the first children to die in or shortly after government custody in almost a decade. And we were witnessing why. But because our purpose in being there was to report back to the courts, we didn't go to the media and tell them what we were seeing. We went back to the courts and reported to the judge. And then the Clint Border Patrol facility visit that David mentioned was an all-adult male facility where we did not expect to encounter any children. And yet we went there and asked the head of the facility to give us a list of any children that were on site that day. And we found out that there were over 350 children being kept there in a facility that was only licensed for 90-something men. And we were very distraught. And we immediately told them, we want you. We asked for a tour of the facilities. They refused to give us one. We had visited, and our team had visited another facility the week before where children were very ill. And some of them had to be admitted for hospitalization. And they wouldn't give us a tour of the facility. So we immediately said to them, bring us your youngest children, bring us the children who had been here the longest, and bring us your child mothers. And the kids started to come in, and they were so dirty, and they were so hungry, and they were so distraught. They immediately were sitting in chairs and falling asleep on the table, the conference table in front of us. And we brought everybody from our team that we could to this site to interview as many of these children as we can. And we stayed there for 4 days and gathered as many stories as we could. And we called the lead attorney in Flores and told him what we had discovered. And he gave us permission to speak to the media for the first time ever. And, in these Flores detention investigations or interviews. And that media story went viral. And what ended up happening is that we started to get a whitewash from the White House on down. Vice President Pence was put on Air Force Two to go to the facility we had been the week before. The kids were dressed up, they were cleaned up, they were put on camera, and Vice President Pence said, "You're being well taken care of here, aren't you?" And the kids said, "Yes." We recognized the clothes they put the kids on because they were from another facility about 45 miles away. And so we realized there was this whitewash. And so we created the pop-up nonprofit called Project Amplify. And we decided we're going to let the American people read the children's stories for themselves so that it wasn't this fight for truth. And we put up the declarations, and people said they're too much. We can't read them. The public said they're too depressing. The media said they're too depressing. And we were really distraught about what we do. And we recognized that lawyers can advocate in the courtroom, but we are not the ones who create the public consciousness. That's what muralists do. That's what artists do. That's what composers do. That's what songwriters do. That's what writers do. And so what we did was we put a call out to the artists across the country. And we said, please go to this website, read the children's declarations, and do something, try and embed this into your work somehow so that we don't have the situation that we had in Germany, where people lived right next door to the concentration camps or, right outside the town, and they denied knowing what was going on. And we did not want people to deny the truth of what was happening by our government in our name in the United States of America. And we were just overwhelmed by the response of artists all around the country. And then to continue 4 years later, to have someone like Juls, who himself migrated to the United States and knows firsthand some of the challenges that they face, is such a, it is an act of creative generosity that I'm so indebted to him to bring his original work to the CU Anschutz campus. But that's the context in which this Art as Advocacy and Testimony series began, was really trying to move beyond legal advocacy in partnering with artists to embed this in the social consciousness.
Sara, what's your experience with art as advocacy? Has there been, do you hear parallels to a lot of the projects that you've worked on?
Well, I actually have worked on a couple of projects and made a huge impact and inroads into using art as advocacy. And I think that as a culture, our history is documented through the arts, and it is the one universal language, whether it is musical, whether it is dance, if it's painting, if it's sculpture, if it's murals. And it's a way to reach an enormous group of people and citizens that would perhaps otherwise not be interested in going to a museum to see an exhibition. And that's what I find very powerful about this particular exhibition. And I did do a project in 1992 with Comic Relief, where we took in families and we did autobiographical paintings with an artist and exhibited them. And the families then were helped to transition into housing and that kind of thing. Then there was recently another project that I worked on for Gravity Water and did a lottery from a painting that was on a very popular television series in the last few years. And I asked Sony Television to give us the painting once the series was over because it had been so popular. It was called Better Call Saul. And the painting hung behind this attorney's desk. And I knew that the popularity of the show would reach a whole segment of society. And that's what also the web gives us a voice. And this project has given all of these children a voice to be heard. And the response has been just absolutely terrific. And I think that having this exhibition for the length of time it's going to be here is going to bring a lot of people to the Fulgenity to see it. And I'm really proud to have been able to help. And I'm honored to be able to work with all of you. So thank you for the opportunity.
You know, I talked a little bit that this has really kind of captured a lot of people's attention here on campus. But what would you hope that viewers of the mural come away with? What is your dream takeaway if somebody comes and sees your mural? No go.
Hello. There you go, sorry. Okay. Well, just want to say first of all, thank you. I see a lot of familiar faces here. So,
She'll try and fix you. Try again.
hello. Hello.
Yeah.
Better.
A little better. She'll play with it. You can go on.
Oh, I mean, just first of all, with public art, it's always the way for the artist to say the things that so needs to be said, you know, and not everyone's willing to say. So public art is very there for the public to feel a connection with the art. So with this mural, being that it's very personal from a experience that I went through, just like a lot of people that I maybe that are here in this room that they're migrated from another country. What's that?
Just keep on talking.
Okay, keep talking. All right, sorry. Well, I mean, the main point that I want people to get from this mural is to find healing in yourself. If there's like something that you might feel like there's not, that you were probably not sure that you were still feeling inside from when you first migrated to the States. I mean, being a kid and then being in the experience of migrating from one country to another and not being your decision is not always easy. You know, I say that, like for myself, okay. Sorry, I'm a little nervous, but I think the main point, like I said, is for people to connect with this mural and find that healing for those that have gone through something similar, you know, as migrating from one country to another. And like myself having my experience migrating from one country to from Mexico to here at 11, I feel like that cultural shock, and there's a lot things that the parents probably don't realize that the kid goes through when they bring their family. You know, it's everyone goes through a lot of different experiences, but it's can you repeat one more question? Sorry.
Well, while I've got you going, can I also ask you to kind of
Sorry, Skip.
describe the,
I saw my parents.
Of the-
I got a little nervous because my parents came in. So
oh, the
So
parents
first-
are here. Wonderful. Welcome. Thank you.
that's my mom.
You should be very proud of Jules. We're very proud of you too. Welcome.
That's my dad.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, sorry, I knew they were coming, so I was waiting. But yeah, I can ask again.
Settle down.
Okay.
So another question I
Yeah.
think a lot of people have about the mural, because it's, you know, we went through 96 submissions and so many of them were literal. You know, they were just banging you over the head about migration. But yours was so ethereal and conceptual. Can you talk a little bit about the symbology and the symbolism of some of the elements within the mural and why you chose what you chose?
Yeah, I mean, the mural, like I said, it came to me easy in a way to put this image, but not exactly that easy, you know. I mean, I say easy because it's something that I experienced and something that I went through. So putting those experiences into an image, it was something that was already in my heart, in my mind, but it was just a matter of putting it together. So in this case, the image of the kid, he's in the journey of going from one country to another. And it's kind of telling a little bit of my personal experience of coming from Mexico to the States, and at the age of 11. So in this case, the kid is unknown of where he's going. He just knows that he's going to a place where people speak English and there's mountains and it's a different environment. So, but he's accompanied by the mother butterfly, which represents migration. I mean, they're known for migrating from Canada to Mexico for a better life or warm weather. So we're very connected with the mother butterfly when it comes to migration, to represent migration. And in this case, he's holding on to his house, you know, like I said, su hogar, which is something that where he feels peaceful, he feels like he can be himself. And even though he's traveling across to an unknown place, he's holding on to those things, to his favorite toys, to his palero, to his trompo, his top, and he's taking whatever he can with him, but you know, he's holding on to everything. And the mask also represents a lot of the culture, the Mexican culture, but also in this case represents like the kid hiding behind reality, you know, hiding. I was talking to before this, I was talking to in the exhibition and telling how when I first came here, like the cultural shock was, it hits you something different, you know, and it can change who you are. So I feel like when I first came here, like it just hit me. And I was very quiet, very shy kid. I think it was everything, just learning another language, just trying to make new friends and being a completely different environment. So in this case, the kid is hiding from all that. Like I was like a lot of kids try to hide their face when they're school, when they're don't know, I don't know, when they just don't feel like they're at home. So that's what the mask represents. And the dahlias represents ferocity too, and being grateful. So in this case, like I said, that's what the mural is trying to show. And just hoping for that connection with someone, someone that has gone through the immigration journey, but it might not be the same, but it can relate, and hopefully you can find some healing into the image. And or if you didn't go through this, maybe makes you want to learn more about immigration, and makes you want to just be more aware or the situations that every kid goes through when they migrate, just makes you do more research on that and just be more appreciative of things that you have.
Frank, your turn. You're running a program that's not only supported this mural, but murals all across Colorado that kind of have a health impact. And how are murals kind of unique to maybe impacting people's kind of curiosity or actions, or are they just because they're more publicly viewable, or how are murals kind of unique for kind of changing public opinion or making people more aware, and kind of comparing it to some other forms of art that might be more cloistered in galleries and other environments?
So some people relate, well, we all, I feel, relate to music. There's dance, there's all forms of art, poetry, or just literature. And I always felt a little, I don't know, envious of writers because they could express themselves so well. And orators, public speakers, but artists, public artists especially, have a unique opportunity to send a message that is specifically, for the most part, well, this is a different niche, I would say, because there's decorative public art, there's just things that are just supposed to make you feel maybe calm, or just I don't know, easy on the eyes kind of art. And then there's art that makes you think and that challenges you. And that's what this is right here. And it's there's a handful of artists that can execute it and execute it well. Juls happens to be one of those special artists, because it's not it's not an easy road or a path. It's not an easy path to continue on when you're doing public art. But to be able to, for one, get through a committee and get everybody's hands raised and be the favored one to like the thought behind where a mural is going to be placed is very important. So you got to think about the community, the immediate community, and then the far-reaching community, because everybody's going to hopefully benefit from it, and I don't know, I forgot the question. What was the question? Yeah, so I get nervous. I think Juls just said he was nervous as well, but speaking isn't our forte, like expressing ourselves through symbolism or imagery, through paint, that's our strength. And I feel like sometimes, I think a lot of, especially younger people can, if you can draw someone in and get them to focus on, it's usually one thing that'll draw them in, and then their eyes go to other places, and then they start learning or asking questions. And I don't know, it could be an inspiration to a lot of people. I know when I first saw art, or public art, I didn't even know it was a thing. I knew private art, gallery art was. And once I did it, I was hooked. It was something I felt like I had to do. Like, I feel like we all might have I don't know, a drive or want to express ourselves with some kind of messaging. And a lot of us might not know how to do it. So I feel like this is a very fortunate way to be able to reach a very large audience and hopefully make a positive impact in the long run.
We'll keep going kind of around the table here. So Warren, what's your kind of hope for, what will this exhibit and the mural what impacts are you hoping for? What are there certain kind of dreams for social or policy awareness that you're hoping that this is going to bring into discussion in our community here?
So yeah, so it's so interesting to hear Frank and Juls talk about this mural in particular and murals generally, because when I first saw this, it was very much the process that Frank described, that it was one thing and then another, and I kept shifting from the dahlias and the mask, and I'm looking at the mountains and wondering, are these the Rockies, or are these, the Sierra Nevada that he might have passed by as he was migrating, and I kept thinking to myself that Juls Mendoza is like a young Gabriel Garcia Marquez muralist. And I was curious if Juls was using, the magical realism that Gabriel Garcia Marquez was known for, or was this something that Juls had created? And so I looked it up on his website to try and understand what his art was, his art style was, that was drawing me in image by image and piquing my curiosity. And I saw that he seems to have created a new artistic style that he refers to as his cultural surrealism. And so step by step by step, I started going deeper into Juls's art and his mind and the symbols that he engaged. And I thought, this is exactly what we need. We need for people to have that curiosity, that hook, to make them curious and to go deeper and deeper and say, who is this artist? Who is this young man? What is this artistic style? What is it that these things are representing? And I think that curiosity helps to open up our hearts and our minds. And that there are two things that we are taught in our training as attorneys. And the first one is that before you try and win over someone's mind, you have to win over their heart. You have to make them open up their heart to your client and want to rule in your client's favor. And then once you do that, you need to give them the intellectual structure to allow them to do that. And Juls's art does this. It makes us curious. It makes us open up our hearts. And then in bringing people into his mural and making them curious about the experiences of children in migration, they might want to learn more. They might want to study more. They might even be so moved that they want to advocate for these children and for their rights. And so for me, it very much is that I'm hopeful that other people will see in Juls' powerful work the same thing that I saw, which is all of these interesting elements that you want to understand. What do they symbolize? And what is he trying to tell us? And what is it that he's trying to share with us about his journey, or this archetypal journey that many children go through? Because migration is very much a part of the human experience, and we need to normalize it and say, this is how people survive. This is how people grow. This is how families become stronger and people become stronger. It's when they take risks and they try and get into a more secure environment, or they try and unite their families, whatever it is that's causing them to migrate. So the bottom line is that I'm hopeful that Juls's mural will have the same impact on people walking by or people coming to see it that causes them to open up their hearts and their minds that the mural affected in me.
I'm hopeful of that too. I've kind of seen a little bit of it already. It draws people in, it brings them into the exhibit as well. And so many of the testimonies in the exhibit are so powerful that, you know, I think that somehow blending them with the art makes it, you can keep reading rather than getting so emotionally destroyed by some of the stories. I know when Sara was working on Andra's project, and you know, we were all in the gallery looking at this artwork, and we couldn't keep up doing it, you know, for more than 15, 20 minutes without kind of taking a breath or, you know, kind of changing the subject a little bit because it was so emotionally powerful. And I think somehow the exhibit is that way too, that it's hard to take it all in at one time. How did you kind of manage getting through so much intense testimony?
I always think of art, you know, in two-dimensional form as an emotional response to something visual that you're getting. And then to have that added layer of the testimony of the children was so emotional. There was like a level of exhaustion and just having to walk. I was glad I could walk outside and take a walk, you know, give myself some space to breathe, because initially when we were laying out the exhibition, I remember one day going to Warren and saying, we have to have some breathing space between these pieces, because at first you know, there were 365 pieces. I read every single one and they were so congested in there that I actually said to Warren, I'm not sure if that's good or bad, because I'm actually sensing what these children in some way must have felt being squished and forced into this situation, and the emotional tenor of it was too much. And I even had a terrible nightmare that one night that someone was trying to take my grandchild from me, and it was anguishing. So finally, I think what I just discovered with David and Warren's help was I'm going to lay these out and try to give at least some breathing space for everybody's emotions, because it is such a powerful testimony of what has gone on. And then not just those pieces that are in the gallery, but the pieces around the outside of that drum, really telling so much of a story. And your mural, it's a lot to take in. And that's the power of art. And that's the, you know, it will convey the message regardless of the words, but the words on top of it just are, you know, an emotional content that you can't turn away from, I don't think.
We have a number of people online who may have questions as well. And if you do, you know, put them into the chat and we'd be glad to share them with our audience and our panel and answer your questions. We do have one? Okay, go ahead, Danielle.
A question for Juls. At what age did you become inspired to create art like the mural? In addition to your story, what else transpired you to continue to share your work? This is a true example of how a picture is worth 1,000 words.
At what age? I think it's recent. As an artist, you go through phases. Sometimes you to kind of find your style, whatever inspires you. And I feel like having gone through some situations, jobs, and experiences have helped me find my style and my inspiration. So I feel like I started a lot, I don't know, just like I said, I was talking to someone. So being born in El Paso, Texas, it's always like a conflict for someone from the border to really identify yourself as a real Mexican, I guess, because you're very on the border town. So it's hard to, because I don't know, people from Central, South America feel like you're not Mexican enough because you're so close to the United States and vice versa, you know. So coming here to the States and learning more about my culture has made me just fell in love with it more and wanting to really highlight that into my art. So it's kind of like when I started my artist career, my mural career. So it's been like 4 years that I've been painting and been finding my style and being very inspired by my culture and my experience, my customs, so my roots. So it's something that it just felt right for me to express through art, because it's something that I live, you know, something that I do on my daily basis and something that someone will see and connect with it. So to answer your question, yeah, it's been like 4 years that I've been inspired by my own culture, my own traditions, to highlight those and also to tell, you know, like said, problems that are out there, like migration or social justice issues that has to be said. And as an artist, sometimes you choose to say or not say, you know, like art is very powerful. So it's a matter of the artist, how you want to use it. If you want to use it as a powerful tool to tell a message or just to express yourself. So
We're getting close to basketball time. So anybody have concluding remarks? Do we have any more audience questions, Danielle?
We have one more question. Do you see more art as advocacy work in your future, Jules?
definitely yes, because like I said, it's something that has to be said, and something that it feels like someone makes that connection, or if someone gets impacted by the art, it makes a change. So it definitely inspires me to keep inspiring those, you know, keep creating in a way to inspire and to just show the world that art, it doesn't always have to be pretty, you know. It just has to, it's a way to express what's out there, you know. So if sometimes it's hard to see the truth in art, you know, but it has to be told sometimes. So it definitely, I'm planning on doing more.
Warren, why don't we give you the last word of the evening? Is there anything you've been dying to share that we haven't talked about yet, or what's next in your busy life?
Well, I think I want to go back to Jules' mural and his commitment that he just stated to continue to use art as advocacy, because as I think it was, I don't remember it was Frank or David who mentioned it, but so many of the murals that were submitted along this theme, they were more like a direct messaging, telling people what to think, being very explicit about how people should feel about this. And one of the things that I really loved about your approach is that it told a story, but it wasn't necessarily a stereotypical story. It was a story that was open to different interpretations and things like that. And so I just want to thank you for not just your commitment to art as advocacy that you've demonstrated in your mural, but that you've now stated publicly will continue to be a part of what inspires your work is advocacy. And I want to applaud and reinforce the unique style that you used in approaching this particular topic that made it immediately rise to the top for all of us who, saw the artwork of almost 100 artists and say, this is different. This palette is different. The images are different. And I want to encourage you to continue to use that cultural realism or surrealism that you've developed, because it is so powerful to not just hit people over the head, but to use that cultural surrealism to spark their interest and tell a story. And so thank you so much for opening up our hearts. Thank you so much for opening up our minds, helping us to be curious about the children arriving to the United States and to want to welcome them, because my goodness, if we could have thousands of people more like you, this country would be so much more beautiful. It's a beautiful country already, but you have made it even more beautiful. And I want to thank you for coming to the United States. I want to thank your parents for bringing you here. And I want to thank you for using your art to share your journey, because it inspires all of us. So thank you so much, Juls.
Yeah. I realized I hadn't asked our live audience if you have questions. And I don't want to keep you kind of locked out of the box. So if you have questions, just press and hold your microphone and feel free to. Must be the
I might
fast-
have a question.
Yes, go ahead. Yeah, press and hold.
Hey, I'm wondering question for everybody. What are some ways everyone here in the audience can advocate for children in migration right now?
Help get some press about this exhibition and the murals so that it does create the powerful dialogue about migration going on with children and in this situation. I think that would be the first step, creating an opportunity for dialogue for more people to see this.
And the exhibition is open Monday through Friday from 11:30 a.m. to 5 p.m. to the general public. So those are the windows that you can come and bring people. Thank you. One more. Good. Press and hold the mic.
Hello. I was just going to say that those of you that are able to vote in this country, check and see who you are voting for and what their viewpoint is on these kinds of topics. Thank you.
Thank
You.
Excellent. And the exhibition will be here throughout the end of the year and maybe a little bit beyond. So there's plenty of time, but like Sara says, share, it'd be great. And thank you all for coming. We hope you enjoy the rest of your evening, and we hope for a win this evening. And thank you, Warren, for joining us from across the country. That was
Thank
totally
you.
amazing. I really appreciate it. And be well, everybody.
Thank you.
Be kind.
Okay, look forward to seeing you all in September. Bye.
I look forward to being able to be